never faced anything like this. Let them come.
Let's be completely honest with each other for a second. When it comes to Transformers, it really does feel like we have seen absolutely everything there is to see. We have sat through decades of cartoons, watched billions of dollars worth of explosive live-action movie adaptations, and read sprawling, incredibly dense comic book epics. It is so easy to look at this franchise and think the well has run completely dry, that there are no new ways to tell a story about giant robots hiding on Earth. But then I picked up the latest Transformers comic run and my jaw hit the floor. No, I am not even kidding. Okay, I am kidding a little bit, but this series here, it is incredibly special and fresh, like nothing you have seen before or expect from a Transformers comic, simply because of just how visceral and violent it is. So it's no surprise that it has been met with universally massive critical acclaim and incredible reception from the fan base. Published by Skybound Entertainment under Image Comics, this monumental book is the crown jewel of the newly minted Energon universe, created by Robert Kirkman, but the first 7 issues that we will be exploring in the video are spearheaded by the absolute powerhouse creator, Daniel Warren Johnson. If you know anything about modern comic books, that name alone should have you sprinting to the nearest store. Johnson is the incredible mind behind absolute masterpieces like Do a Powerbomb, Murder Falcon, and Extremity. In those books, he mastered the art of combining face-to-face melting action with deeply emotional, heart-wrenching character beats. Here, he is channeling those exact same tropes, but somehow doing it even better. But I need to warn you, this is not your childhood cartoon. This version of Transformers is brutally, shockingly violent. The stakes have never felt heavier because we are finally seeing what it actually means when warring metal gods bring their conflict to our world and we meet their wrath. As one character from the book itself, we are shocked to see just how crazy and brutal the Transformer wrath could be for us brittle humans. We are seeing Decepticons killing us humans with zero hesitation, crushing us puny humans between their hands like bugs. The horror and collateral damage of this war are front and center, completely changing the tone of the Autobot and Decepticon struggle. But in order to truly understand how we got here, we have to talk about how brilliantly this whole universe was launched. It all started in secret within the pages of Robert Kirkman's Void Rivals. In that book, 2 warring alien races stranded on a desolate planet stumble across a crashed ship. Inside, they accidentally awaken a dormant Jetfire, the Cybertronian, and in that single mind-blowing moment, the Energon universe was officially born. From there, the Transformers series picks up right in the middle of a catastrophic situation. Before issue 1 even begins, the backstory is grim. Let me give you some context. So, Cybertron is nearly a dead, ruined world with an extreme energy crisis. Centuries ago, the Autobots were forced to flee from Cybertron because of the Decepticon massacre, but Megatron, along with his Decepticon High Command, pursued. In the end, they crashed into Earth in their ship, the Ark, and remained buried in stasis. But when they are accidentally rebooted in the present day, they wake up severely damaged, missing their leader and desperately starved of Energon. The circumstances the Autobots find themselves in from issue 1 to issue 7 are absolutely dire. Optimus Prime is forced to carry the crushing weight of his failure, fighting tooth and nail alongside a severely depleted roster that includes Ratchet, Cliffjumper, Wheeljack, and RC. And although Megatron is missing some of the action, he's not completely gone. And finally, we are going to explore this no-holds-barred, absolutely unhinged version of Transformers that has everyone hyped up right now. Let's begin! Issue number 1. After centuries of sleep, Cybertronians resurrect in a strange new world, and Starscream becomes a human killer. The comic begins with the images of a couple of aircrafts and 2 fallen soldiers. One was of the US choppers flying into enemy territory, while the other was of a heavily damaged spaceship darting toward Earth. Much like these 2 images, we see 2 fallen beings, separated by worlds, united by fate. One was a US soldier and the other was Optimus Prime. And strangely, the next panel tells us about a space shuttle's launch. But hey, it turns out this was just a dream. Whose dream, you ask? Well, Spike Witwicky comes to the local bar to find his dad, Sparky Witwicky, whom he wakes up from his drunken slumber. Spike had been looking all over for his dad, so the kid was not quite mellow in waking him up. Meanwhile, another super drunk patron named Jerry was talking about seeing some box-shaped fighter jet coming down from space. He says the craft was white and red and that he also had a Polaroid somewhere, but as one can expect, the bartender named Danny dismisses Jerry's claims, cause let's face it, Jerry is the kind of guy who has probably made a shit ton of bullshit stories before actually coming up with a claim that was actually true. Kinda like the boy who cried wolf. Anyway, Spiky asks Sparky how long he had been there, and although the man does not answer correctly by saying, "not long," Danny corrects Sparky and tells Spiky that his father had been drinking there since noon. Soon, Sparky sees that Spike had his brother Jimmy's telescope, so he asks about it, to which the kid replies that Carly and he were going to check out the full moon from the top of Hangar's Rock. So, they had lost Jimmy in a space shuttle mishap, and although Sparky wants to just forget about the incident, Spike does these things so that he can still remember Jimmy. It was his way of showing his love for Jimmy, and he also fires back at his dad, telling him that he won't end up like Jimmy. But their conversation gets interrupted when Davy arrives. Davy was Sparky's co-worker and was offering a ride to Sparky so that they could go together and do the night shift. Oh, and I want to point out just how bad an alcoholic Mr. Witwicky had become, cause it started at noon and now it was time to start his night shift job. Sparky sits in Davy's car and tells his son that he will someday have to move on from Jimmy and grow up, to which he asks angrily, "And be like you?" And a dejected Sparky asks Davy to drive off. Needless to say, that sounded rough, and Carly echoed my concern. Now, in most iterations, Carly is a science geek who even went to MIT, and someone who understands how alien machines work better than most human. However, in the Energon universe, in which the comic book is based, she is an art student, and as of now, she and her father are saving money so that she can go to a good art college. Oh, and you could totally see how good she is from what she painted on the side of her van using airbrushes. And although she was happy with how it turned out, she thought something was still missing, but wasn't sure what. Anyway, Carly tries to console a dejected Spike who was almost always discouraged by his father from becoming an astronaut after what happened to Jimmy. But let me tell you, Sparky is not a bad father. Not at all. It's just that he does not want to see another one of his sons go before time. The man is scared, that's all. Anyway, the teenagers begin their journey to the top of Hangar's Rock Mountain, and Carly, in order to take Spike's mind off the past hour, asks him to pretend they're on another planet. The two of them talk about their futures, and we learn that Spike has been accepted into the University of California, Berkeley, which is like a dream college if one wanted to become an astronaut. But Spike hadn't quite gathered the courage to tell his dad yet. The two of them hold hands and lean in closer. But before they could do anything else, a sudden unnatural earthquake shakes the ground so violently that the mountain itself splits and they fall down the pit, only to crash land and find themselves inside huge circular structures that seem artificially made. Yep, those were the gigantic boosters of an equally gigantic spacecraft. As the kids explore further, they come across the central control room of the spacecraft, and what they find inside shocks them. The place was littered with humongous robots, and of course they had no idea what any of it was doing here. But if you looked out of the window, you could see that a jet was approaching, kinda like the one described by Jerry at the beginning of the issue. But we know that this was the Cybertronian spaceship called the Ark, and the jet that Jerry saw earlier was, in fact, Jetfire. So he flies into the Ark and transforms into his normal robotic self, and the dude is elated to have once again found his friends. Fallen friends. He did not have enough energon or power to lift the ship and bring it home, so he instead triggered the earthquake that ultimately revealed the positions of these fallen Cybertronians to him. He also found his buddy's new forms that the creatures of Earth would find familiar, which would ultimately help them stay discreet. This bit is interesting because people always ask why it is that robotic aliens transform into earthly vehicles and planes and whatnot. He then activates the computer called Teletran 1, which repairs the Cybertronians and brings them up to their full strength. The very first one to be reactivated is Starscream. Jetfire was happy to see his old buddy, someone he had not seen in centuries, and Starscream was happy that Jetfire, quote-unquote, picked the right side, which is when he noticed a fallen Bumblebee lying beside him, and painted on Bumblebee was the Autobots' insignia, which pissed Starscream off so much that he shot Bumblebee and nearly blasted his head off. Of course, this shocked the kids, who were still watching robots come to life, but it also stunned Jetfire, who tried to stop Starscream, and in return, the evil Decepticon shot Jetfire straight in the chest, and as you will see in just a bit, the wound that Jetfire sustained was pretty severe. And the new Decepticons leader's next target was going to be Jazz, but by now Optimus Prime had been resurrected, or reconstructed, whatever you want to call it. Either way, he had joined the fray and he stopped Starscream from hurting Jazz. But hey! Look who just got reconstructed! Well, Optimus Prime was up and active, and he grabbed the Decepticon warrior's arm and he rebuked him for shooting beings while they were helpless, to which Starscream says, "Unlike you, Optimus Prime, I do whatever it takes." And yet, the villains lose somehow. Anyway, seeing the two juggernauts fight, Spike and Carly run for their lives, which is when Optimus notices them. But Starscream was still shooting from his arm cannon, so Prime becomes their shield. By now, Ratchet also joins the fray and attacks Starscream, which proved to be a huge help to Optimus. But the computer Teletran 1 also resurrects Skywarp, so it seemed like the computer was bringing back the Cybertronians without any order as such, and after realizing this, Starscream asks Skywarp to bring the remaining Decepticons closer, and Optimus figures out that the Autobots would soon be outnumbered. And since he was brave but not reckless, he asked his team to retreat and fight another day, but not before ordering Ratchet to load the Autobot bodies into Prime's new form, a huge trailer, while he himself keeps the newly reconstructed Decepticons busy, buying Ratchet the time he needed. By now, Soundwave was also back and he attacked Optimus as well, but as the Autobot leader recovered, he came across the messed up remains of Bumblebee, which absolutely broke him. Still, he did not get the time to grieve as Ravage and Starscream engaged him again, and it was now that Spike noticed Optimus needed help getting his blaster. So he and Carly pushed the blaster towards Prime, which he then used to fight back. Prime pushed his attackers away and figured there was just one option left. He had to destroy the computer Teletran 1, because it was bringing back more Decepticons than Autobots, and at this rate, Prime and his party would be annihilated, and soon. So he destroys the computer, and as it explodes, Optimus takes Spike and Carly along with him. He drives out of the Ark with Ratchet along with him, and also with Starscream and Skywarp in hot pursuit of them, although their energon levels were super low. The Decepticons were airborne and had a number of weapons in their forms, which gave them an advantage over the Autobots, and one of them was an ambulance, for heaven's sake. I am talking about Ratchet. So the good guys were taking a lot of fire, which is when Jetfire regained his consciousness after the first attack from Starscream knocked him out. Yet he attacked Starscream once again, but I am sure he regretted it, cause Starscream volleyed back and wounded Jetfire. Correction, he critically wounded Jetfire. Meanwhile, Skywarp had to stop the hunt because his energon level was critically low, and therefore Starscream also had to stop the pursuit. The Autobots needed to recuperate, and Spike leads them to this abandoned quarry, where Jetfire succumbed to his injury. And although Optimus tried to use the Matrix of Leadership to fix Jetfire, Ratchet reminds him that Jetfire was beyond repair, and Optimus had to see his old friend die a painful death while he held his hand. Back in the Ark, Soundwave informs his leader that Teletran 1 was beyond fixing because they did not have the required raw material and the energon that would do the trick, which meant that they were the only Decepticons left until the computer was repaired. Which also meant that the number of Autobots was also fixed. Starscream also learns that Soundwave had sent Laserbeak to find energon sources, but finding the sources would not be enough. Harvesting it would be a task only possible for Starscream, as he had the most energon reserve of all the Decepticons presently active on Earth. He did not want to accept this responsibility, but he had to, albeit begrudgingly, and yeah, there was no other choice for him as the current leader of the Decepticon. But something much, much worse was about to happen. We forgot Davy and Sparky. Well, their shift ended while all this fight took place between two factions of robotic aliens. As they prepare to exit the power plant, Starscream arrives there. Davy panics and tries to make a run for his truck, despite Sparky's warnings against doing so. This was the first time that Starscream saw a native of this world, and was amused to see just how fragile, squishy, and pathetic humans were. Before you know it, he grabs Davy in his hand and just crushes him, while a shocked Sparky watches in horror. Now, this is not something you see every day in the Transformer franchise. I mean, they do not really show such graphic death sequences, but I guess the Decepticons have truly become these violent beings that see humans for who they are, weak, pathetic mortals, who compare to nothing when faced against the wrath of giant transforming robots. Oh, and trust me folks, Starscream is gonna squish and step on a bunch of humans. He's just ruthless this time around. Issue number 2. Autobots adapt, Decepticons rebuild. Optimus Prime walks through a forest and for a moment he looks peaceful. I mean, the guy has seen 2 centuries of war and now he stands there staring at trees like he discovered art. He talks about the plants, the animals, and the way this planet feels alive in a way Cybertron never did. You can tell he respects it, but then he hears a grunt, and unfortunately it was not a twig or a branch, but a deer. He looks down and realizes he stepped on the poor thing and killed it, and that makes him like super guilty, like very guilty, because if you know Optimus, you know that he would not hurt a fly if he did not absolutely have to, even if the fly was hurting him. So our favorite Autobot leader, well, he kneels, cradles the body in his massive hand, and you see it on his face, this huge regret. Spike walks out of the woods and tells him it was an accident, and yeah, it was. But Optimus does not brush it off. He tells Spike this world is fragile. Compared to Cybertron, Earth feels breakable, and somehow it seems like this fragility of Earth and its denizens is important to him. And maybe he sees himself as a bit of a guardian for Earth, especially now that the Decepticon threat is upon them. He says, "Where I am from, everything is metal. The ground does not sway when I walk. I don't leave marks where my feet tread. I should have known better." Spike sees where Prime's head is at and changes the conversation. He asks about the name Optimus Prime. Prime explains that Prime is a title passed down from the previous Autobot leader. It means responsibility, legacy, leadership. Then Prime asks Spike about his name. Spike says that his mom used to call him Spiky because of his hair, but she passed away. Optimus pauses at that. He does not know what mom or dad mean. He does understand family, however, as a concept, but the human version? Well, that is new. Anyway, Spike also tells him that he lives in Farmingham, the valley below the mountain. And then the kid asks the giant leader where he was from. So Optimus tells him all about Cybertron, and then gives Spike, as well as us, a history lesson, which I think is important to note here, because it would tell us in which era exactly the comic is set. He says, and I quote, "I am from a place called Cybertron. It is beautiful in its own harsh way. For a millennium before my spark came into being, there was peace. I heard stories of it all throughout my young years, but only knew a short time of prosperity there before the war. Our species was consumed by greed and power. Maybe it was always there, hiding since the birth of Cybertron, but to me it seemed to raise its ugly head from nowhere, led by an extremist faction on our planet, the Decepticons." Then Spike interjects and remembers. The red and gray one, the plane. Prime continues, "Starscream is one of the many we have been fighting for centuries, among others. For 2 centuries, my kind, the Autobots, had been fighting for the old ways of peace, but our casualties were astronomical. Our numbers had dwindled so badly that we had no choice but to abandon our home to our oppressors, to scour the galaxy and find a way to retake our home. We left in the ship you found us on, the Ark. It was during our escape that the most powerful of the Decepticons came to extinguish the spark of my kind forever. During the fight, we lost control of our ship. The last thing I remember was seeing your planet right before entering its atmosphere." Prime thanks Spike for helping during the battle back at the Ark. He also concedes that they might not have escaped without him, and Spike, to his credit, offers condolences for Bumblebee. Then Ratchet interrupts the somber and heavy mood in the best way possible by telling the great leader that Cliffjumper is back online. Optimus greets his old friend warmly. Cliffjumper, however, does not share Prime's appreciation for Earth. He sees Spike and Carly and panic. He bumps into trees, nearly loses it. Carly was calm though, and she asked him to relax. I mean, if anyone should panic about giant robots from space, it should be her. And somehow Cliffjumper calms down after hearing that, and they shake hands. I must admit, it felt oddly wholesome. Back in the quarry, Ratchet works non-stop. He tries to revive the other Autobots, but here is the problem. He used the last of their energon to fix Cliffjumper. That is it. Tank empty. Optimus considers using the Matrix of Leadership to replenish their energon reserves, but Ratchet shuts that idea down. The Matrix links to Prime's life force. If they risk that and lose him, they lose everything. Oh wait, I forgot to tell you how they managed to bring back Cliffjumper without that Teletran computer, right? So when Jetfire gave them the new forms, he kept the Cybertronian tech intact, and using Prime's tactical trailer, combined with the leftover metals of the quarry, Ratchet was able to bring back Autobots. Anyway, at this point, Cliffjumper points out that if they are low on Energon, the Decepticons likely face the same issue. Fair point, but hope is not a strategy. Meanwhile, back at the power plant, things go from bad to worse. A police officer surveys the wreckage from Starscream's earlier attack. The plant manager tries to explain that a giant robot did this, but as one can expect, the officer does not buy it. He says detectives will handle it, but Sparky knows better than that. Despite being shaken and panicked, he suggests the most sensible thing and insists they need the army. He knows what he saw, and to help him prove his point in the most undesirable way ever, Skywarp drops from the sky and destroys the patrol car. Starscream and Soundwave descend behind him. They carry an energy transfer module stolen from the Ark. Oh yeah, the thing about Energon is that it can be collected from several energy sources, some of them being natural ones and some, well, not so natural. But a power plant was just a good enough fit for Energon harvesting, so this device lets them convert Energon from the plant more efficiently. The officer draws his weapon and fires at Starscream, despite Sparky telling him not to do so, because he knows bullets won't do these guys any damage. And yep, the bullets did nothing to Starscream, who simply went on to step on the officer. That is the end of that. Meanwhile, Soundwave intercepts a military transmission. The US military calls in a pilot under the call sign Frosting to check out some strange radar signal, possible bogey. Starscream laughs at the idea that the squishy, fragile, pathetic humans think they can fight them, so he takes off to deal with it personally. The dogfight does not last long. Starscream transforms midair and smacks the jet down. The pilot and his ride-along eject, but Starscream, that son of a wench, catches Frosting and crushes him between his hands. This is how brutal this version of Starscream is. Like, he does not hesitate even once, and if I tell you about what Megatron does later in the story, you'll go nuts. There's a hint of cannibalism, and I am not even kidding. Anyway, the other soldier, Frosting's partner, you see, he was not done. I don't want to spoil it for you, but he is someone you probably know very well. So he activates a button on his parachute and it converts into a winged jetpack. As Starscream approaches, the soldier fires a flare gun and lands a lucky shot in Starscream's eye. That buys him enough time to retreat. Starscream decides the human is not worth the trouble and lets him go. And then we see his name tag. Duke flies off to fight another day. Yep, he's a Joe, the Joe. Back at the plant, Sparky steals a patrol car and makes a run for it. Skywarp chases him. Before Skywarp can grab him, Frosting's damaged F-18 falls from the sky and lands on Skywarp and Soundwave. The explosion gives Sparky the opening he needs to escape. The blast is visible from the quarry. Spike and Carly realize the planet is under attack. Optimus feels the weight of it. He says their war has reached this planet and that makes it his responsibility. Ratchet argues they need to secure energy first. Prime does not disagree, but he will not sit back while Decepticons tear through humans. And he knows that the power plant will give these evil Decepticons a nearly limitless supply of Energon. Totally unacceptable. So he assigns Cliffjumper to stay behind and protect the dormant Autobots. Spike insists on going to help his dad, and Optimus hesitates but allows it. Carly, on the other hand, tries to talk Spike out of it. She says they need to get home to their parents, but Spike refuses, so Carly drives home alone. Oh, and she had painted Prime on her van the previous night. On the way, Laserbeak spots her van and notices Prime's painting on it. Carly reaches home and finds Sparky already there. He wears old army fatigues and carries guns. That says everything about his headspace. The poor child asks where her dad is, and with a heavy heart, Sparky tells her that they killed him, that Davy is dead. And there it is. The cost of this war keeps climbing. And while fathers suit up for battle and kids choose sides, Autobots adapt and Decepticons rebuild. And Earth, our dear fragile Earth, finds itself right in the middle of it. Issue 3. Optimus vs. Skywarp. An arm lost, an innocent injured in the crossfire. Issue 3 opens with grief, and it does not soften the blow. Carly asks Sparky how her father died, and Sparky tells her exactly how it was. That a giant robot crushed him. Yeah, crushed. That's what he tells the teenage daughter of a man who just got, well, crushed. But come on. Anyway, Carly pieces it together instantly and asks if the robot was red and gray and turned into a plane. Sparky was obviously shocked that she knew any of this, but she was sure that it was Starscream that turned her dad into human paste. So she starts to explain everything. The Ark, the buried ship, her and Spike finding it. But Sparky does not care about alien backstories right now. He wants one thing, his son. So, where is Spike? Is his boy okay? And before she can answer, Laserbeak attacks. The mechanical bird tears into the house and Sparky reacts like a soldier. He fires. Of course he fires. It does nothing though, and Laserbeak tosses him across the room like a marshmallow and then corners Carly. Now, I'll be honest, this is one of those moments where you think, okay, this might go very bad. But hey, Cliffjumper arrives at the exact right second and kicks Laserbeak square in the face. And after sustaining this clean hit, Laserbeak retreats. Cliff steps toward Carly, probably to check if she is alright, and Sparky loses it. He sees a giant robot near his friend's daughter and fires a shotgun straight at Cliff's face. Carly screams at him to stop, but Sparky drags her into the police car he stole earlier and speeds off. From his perspective, robots equal death, and he does not know any better, but Carly could have done better. I mean, she was all talk with Spike and Cliffhanger earlier. I am sure she could have even made Sparky see reason, or at least make him hear her version of the story. Meanwhile, back at the Ark, Starscream was fuming, mostly because Teletran 1 was still broken, and he took that frustration out on Soundwave. Soundwave explains what situation they were in and how they had enough energon, but the raw materials they gathered are not advanced enough to repair the computer. When Soundwave begins to mention what Megatron would do, Starscream slaps him. Hard. He repeats the order not to say that name. So yes, Megatron still casts a shadow over this whole thing, even in absence. Laserbeak sends an alert about finding another Autobot, and Starscream sends Skywarp to handle it. Now Sparky drives Carly to the Veterans Bar. She asks why here. Sparky explains that the Decepticons jammed phone, radio, and internet signals. No army, no backup. If they want help, they must build it. Inside, Danny and other veterans already form a small militia. They heard the explosions. They know something is wrong. And do you remember Jerry? Well, he convinces everyone that he saw metal men, big metal men. And although Carly finally tries to tell Sparky that not all the robots are enemies, Sparky shuts that down immediately. He has seen war. When gunfire starts, people die. That is his worldview now, or maybe that's his tunnel view now. And right then, Cliffjumper appears in the doorway again to tell them that he was a good guy, but before he could finish his sentence, the entire bar unleashes their guns on the poor Autobot. Then Skywarp arrives and the humans assume Cliff brought reinforcements, so they fire at both Cybertronians. From their angle, there are no sides. There are only towering machines that wreck their town and maybe kidnap a kid or two. Yeah, so that's what Sparky thinks, that the machines took his only living son. On the outskirts, however, Optimus and Spike see smoke rising and Prime heads straight for it. Back at the bar, bullets bounce off Skywarp and he has a blast fighting the fragile humans and their ticklish weapons. Danny realizes small arms will not cut it, so he and Sparky grab a bazooka. Before they can finally regroup, the bar collapses inward under the strain of the fight. Skywarp approaches Cliffjumper, clearly ready to finish him, and Carly steps in front of the Autobot. Yes, she actually does that. Skywarp seems amused by the gesture. And then, Optimus rams into Skywarp in truck mode, which was pretty awesome to be honest. And while the impact saves Cliff and Carly, Prime transforms and tells Spike to take cover. Then he focuses entirely on Skywarp. Now the fight turns serious. Skywarp teleports constantly, appearing behind Prime, striking, and vanishing again. Optimus counters with his Energon axe, and the Autobot leader knows very well how to adapt fast to his varied enemies. At one point, he pins Skywarp down and orders him to surrender, and for a second it looked like Prime might regain control. But then humans had to meddle and mess everything up. Yeah, so Sparky and Danny fire the bazooka at Optimus. Can you imagine? Like, can't you see what was happening? One metal man was killing people and destroying things. The other metal man stopped him. So the second one is a good guy. That's so basic. Oh god. Anyway, the blast tears into Prime's right arm and damages it severely. That moment changes everything. Skywarp regains his footing and blasts Prime backward. Sparky orders the militia to fire at both robots. In his mind, there is no Autobot or Decepticon. There is only one threat. And during the chaos, Spike runs towards Optimus, but the boy gets caught in the crossfire. Skywarp notices that almost immediately and taunts Prime. He moves to crush the injured boy. That is when Optimus tackles him, and here comes the part that stuck with me. Prime looks at his damaged arm, and beyond all logic, he tears it off. He rips his own arm free and uses it as a weapon. He beats Skywarp down with it, and the panels that show him doing this were brutal, desperate, and yes, extremely effective. Skywarp falls back and Prime kneels beside Spike, who was now bleeding heavily from the wound. Sparky runs toward them, tears on his face, his handgun aimed at Optimus, and the father screams at Prime to get away from his son. You can feel the fear, the anger, and maybe a hint of regret. Optimus, however, well, he simply transforms and asks Sparky to get in. He says he will save the boy. And that is where the third one wraps up, with an arm gone. A child was injured, a father forced to trust the very being he tried to kill. Furthermore, the line between ally and enemy has never looked thinner. Issue number 4. Autobots protect Spike, Decepticons turn against and rip apart one of their own. Issue 4 begins with smoke still thick over Farmingham because of the recent battle, and before anyone has time to recover, Starscream descends to meet Skywarp. Now remember, Skywarp barely survived the last encounter. He looks torn apart and barely functional, and Starscream does not ask about his condition with any warmth. He wants information. Where did the Autobots go? Skywarp points east. That is enough, but yeah, Starscream does promise that he would return for him before taking off. Whether that promise means rescue or something else, well, we already know how Starscream treats weakness. Meanwhile, back at the quarry, Ratchet was working on Wheeljack when Optimus called for help. Prime was driving through the woods with Sparky and a mortally wounded Spike inside him, and Starscream right behind. You can almost feel the tension through the transmission. Then, a blast hits Prime while he was still on the call with Ratchet. The signal cuts and Ratchet reacts, but instead of rushing blindly, he mutters that Prime will have to wait. Why? Because the Autobots need firepower first. Needless to say, Ratchet thinks long-term even when emotions run high, and the need is urgent. I mean, he knows the stakes and works accordingly. Back to the chase, fellas. Starscream lands in front of Optimus, blocking the path. It looks over for a second. But hey, Carly and Cliffjumper drive the ladder into Starscream, knocking him off his feet, and this tiny but crucial window of opportunity lets Optimus push forward. He runs Starscream over and continues with Cliff aboard. Starscream rises furious and calls Soundwave for backup. You knew that was coming. Optimus reaches Farmingham Hospital, and for one hopeful second, it feels like they might make it. Then Laserbeak swoops in and starts firing. Optimus and Cliff shield Sparky, Carly, and the hospital staff, while Spike gets rushed inside. However, Rumble and Soundwave join the attack quickly. Soundwave lines up to execute Optimus right there in the parking lot, and then Starscream arrives and tells him to wait. Why? Because he has a better idea. He realizes this building is where humans get repaired. If he destroys it, Prime suffers more than physical damage. So he decides to blast the hospital itself. Inside, doctors barely intubate Spike before the power cuts out. The assault knocks the grid offline. Machines flicker dead. You can imagine the panic in that operating room. Starscream seems almost delighted. He wants Prime to watch Hope disappear. And then Soundwave alerts him that Ratchet approaches with something new online. That something is Jazz. Yes, Jazz. This guy enters the fight like he was born to do it, and let's face it, Jazz tunes his way into fights and it feels awesome. The Decepticons focus fire on him, but he moves too well and too quickly for them. He takes them down in short order. Now outnumbered, Starscream orders Soundwave and the cassettes retreat. After the battle, Carly returns to Prime and she asks about Spike. The Autobots watch through a blasted hole in the hospital wall as doctors tell Sparky that Spike has stabilized. However, the backup generator did not survive the fight. Without power, Spike and every other patient on life support will die, and Sparky prepares to lose another son. But this is where Optimus makes a choice. A blue glow begins from his chest compartment. Ratchet tries to stop him, but Prime refuses. He pulls out the Matrix of Leadership and opens it. The energy floods the hospital and restores power. And before you know it, machines revive. Lights return. Yep, they were back in business. and the doctors rush Spike to the ICU. But the thing is, Prime used every last bit of the Matrix's energy to do that. Every bit, which means that he cannot fix himself now, or bring back the missing arm either. Meanwhile, back at the Ark, the Decepticons regroup. Soundwave criticizes Starscream again, and he calls out his short-sighted destruction. Starscream snaps back and blames Soundwave for failing to repair Teletron 1. Without that computer, they cannot revive their brothers or repair themselves. Soundwave repeats the truth. They lack the necessary materials, and those materials exist only in Cybertronian technology. As he says that, both of them look at Skywarp, and despite Skywarp's protests, they start tearing him apart for components. That is Starscream's version of leadership. Can you imagine? Like he just murdered his friend and soldier in cold blood by ripping him apart, or at least he did not care if salvaging parts from Skywarp would kill him. Like, I am happy Skywarp got what he deserved, but this was a bit too dark, and I guess that's the beauty of this comic book. Back at the hospital, Sparky comes to Optimus and asks about the Matrix. Prime explains it was a gift from long ago, and he used all its energy to power the hospital. Now, Spike's fate rests with the Great Spark, but Sparky struggles with the idea that a being like Optimus believes in a higher force. Prime finds that amusing. Sparky underestimates his own kind more than he realizes. Later in the generator room, Optimus reunites with Jazz and Ratchet. Ratchet finishes repairs on the hospital generators, then he turns on Prime. He criticizes the use of the Matrix and says Prime should have repaired himself instead. Optimus rejects that idea completely since he would not let innocent humans die to preserve his own form. Ratchet counters that humans are not innocent and that they are also prone to anger and destruction. Optimus reflects on that and says Cybertronians are not much different. Then Jazz collapses and Ratchet admits he drained Energon from the other dormant Autobots to revive Jazz, and it was barely enough. The Autobots face extinction without new Energon. Ratchet mentions he has something stored in Prime's trailer that could help them regain initiative, but Optimus calls it too disgusting to consider. Although they don't confirm it yet, I am sure Ratchet was suggesting they pull a Skywarp on Bumblebee. In fact, Ratchet insists they may not have a choice. Before the argument escalates, Sparky interrupts and says that he believes he might have an idea to address their energy problem. Meanwhile, in a damaged hospital room, Cliffjumper tries to comfort Carly. He tells her that long before Earth, Starscream killed Cliff's entire clan, his family, and that Cliff joined the war the very next day. He understands her grief. Next thing we know, Optimus approaches with a new arm equipped with a large cannon mounted on it. Any guesses whose arm this is? Anyone? Well, it gets answered in the next issue, but for now, he asks Cliff if he wants to go on the offensive, which only means that Prime now wants to shift the momentum. I mean, he is done reacting to things. He now wants to take action. Back at the Ark, Starscream continues salvaging parts from the still-living Skywarp and declares himself eternal leader of the Decepticons. Clearly, he very strongly believes in this role for himself, but the poor Decepticon does not know that far away, in an Arctic region, something rests beneath the ice. Megatron lies offline, badly damaged, missing his right arm, embedded in frozen Earth. Silent, waiting. But he's present on Earth. Is anyone else rooting for Megatron at this point? Like, I want him back so that Starscream is stopped and we get a Decepticon leader who means business and not just death and destruction for kicks. Issue number 5. The ranks of both sides grows, a war seems inevitable, and Devastator is coming to town. Issue 5 slows down for a second, and I mean that in the best possible way, because after everything that happened, we needed that pause. Optimus and Sparky stand there and talk, not as soldier and alien, but as two men who have seen war. Sparky asks the question we all ask at some point. Why does it have to be like this? And Optimus, who has fought for 2 centuries, does not give some grand preachy speech. He simply says that he does not know why wars happen or why they have to be like this. Then Prime looks at his reflection. He now has Megatron's arm replacing the one he tore off. I mean, let that sink in for a moment. He wonders if he is becoming the very thing he fights against, and I think that's one of those thoughts that's going to linger around him for a while. Meanwhile, back at the Ark, the Decepticons rebuild themselves and their computer. Teletron 1 now functions again, and yes, it got rebuilt using parts from Skywarp's body. Thundercracker also comes online and immediately sees what remains of Skywarp. He is horrified to see what he sees, but Starscream steps in and spins the torture as a sacrifice for the greater good. Laserbeak then alerts Soundwave that the Autobots have found a new energy source. So Starscream decides to act. He takes Soundwave, Thundercracker, and 2 newly revived soldiers, Frenzy and Reflector, and heads out. Now, where are the Autobots? At the local dam. Sparky works alongside Ratchet and Wheeljack, who, by the way, has only half his body functional due to limited resources. They divert water from the dam to power an energon-generating turbine. It is not elegant, but it works. Wheeljack offers to repair Optimus first, since Prime still carries Megatron's arm. Optimus refuses. He insists the energy goes to restoring their warriors. That is who he is. So they revive RC next, and she wakes up relieved to be back, all jolly and gay, but the happiness gets cut short as the Decepticons attack once again, this time with a greater force. But fret not, the Autobots also have had their numbers boosted. So Reflector makes the first move and goes after Optimus. Prime answers with the fusion cannon, now mounted where Megatron's arm used to be. Reflector does not survive that exchange, and the next thing we know, Frenzy is trying his luck and ends up with his skull smashed against the ground. The fight escalates quickly as Starscream shouts at Optimus for taking something precious from the Decepticons. Optimus pushes back. In fact, the Autobot leader taunts Starscream, saying he fears the cannon because he fears its previous owner. Whoa! I am sure that line hurt Starscream more than he would ever care to admit. Anyway, the unworthy Decepticon leader reacts the only way he knows how. He fires his null rays at the water turbine and destroys it. Their new energy source goes offline. But Prime counters. He blasts Starscream with the fusion cannon and forces a retreat. The Decepticons pull back, at least for now. With their numbers slightly stronger and their enemy pushed away, Optimus makes a decision and tells his friends that they would now retake the Ark. Sparky decides to join them, Carly wants in too, and honestly, after everything she has seen, who could blame her? But both Optimus and Sparky refuse. They do not want her hurt the way Spike got hurt. Cliffjumper, however, sees it differently. He quietly sneaks Carly into his driver's seat because he thinks she deserves to be there when this ends, and I think I respect that. I mean, it is reckless, yes, but I respect that. Night falls as the Autobots approach the Ark, and it feels all tense and stuff. It was like quiet, too quiet. And then they see them. A convoy of green. The Constructicons block the path. Starscream appears again, fully repaired, and he gloats. He says he knew the Autobots would come back. Of course he did. He orders the Constructicons to do what they do best. They merge to form the Devastator, and that is where the issue leaves us, with the Autobots ready to reclaim their ship, and the Decepticons stronger than before, thanks to the Devastator. Issue number 6, A Sacrifice is Made. Issue 6 does not ease us in, and instead, in fact, very much on the contrary. It throws us straight back into the fire. The Autobots and Sparky try to take cover inside the Ark, while Devastator tears into it from the outside. And when I say tears into it, I mean the giant Gestalt treats the Ark like a toy. The ground shakes, metal bends, and for a second you wonder how they would ever possibly survive this. Cliffjumper falls back in the retreat, ready to jump back into the fight, but Carly stops him. She tells him to think smarter, find another way into the Ark, find more firepower. And yeah, I am glad that that is her instinct now. All strategy and no panic. Outside, Starscream laughs as Devastator wrecks everything in sight. He loves this and feeds off it. And then Optimus Prime kicks him square in the face like a good boot to the jaw. However, Devastator was not supposed to be taken lightly, and to prove this point, the machine grabs Prime and tosses him around like he weighs nothing. And quite obviously, Prime takes severe damage. RC, on the other hand, drags him inside while Jazz lays down suppressive fire to buy time. Devastator then grabs Ratchet and tries to drag him out of the Ark. By now, it looks like the Autobots have no choice, so they shut the bay doors, but that also comes with a cost. You see, Ratchet's leg gets severed in the process because it gets stuck between the doors, and Devastator pounds at the doors, trying to punch through, but Soundwave calls him off. He reminds Devastator that this is their sanctuary, so they should not be damaging it. Well, not a lot at least. So, Soundwave suggests digging through the mountain to get in, and like a good dog, Devastator obeys the command. Meanwhile, Cliffjumper and Carly scale the mountain and reach an access port at the back of the ship. It feels like a clever move, but then Starscream appears at the scene. Inside the Ark, things look grim. The Autobots place Optimus on a table. Ratchet examines him and tells everyone that the damage was too severe and that he cannot fix Prime. As Optimus weakens, he apologizes. He says he led them on with false hope. Then he removes the Matrix of Leadership from his chest and tries to pass it on. But he drops it because he does not even have the strength to hold the Matrix of Leadership. And that tells you just how severely injured and grievously hurt the Autobot leader was. Seeing all this, however, Sparky steps forward. He looks at the Matrix and reflects on something deeply human. Every time someone he loved faced death, he wondered if he could have taken their place, and the answer was always no, although he wished otherwise. But this time was different. This time he could really try. He places his hand inside the Matrix and tells Optimus to tell Spike how proud he is of him. Then he enters the Matrix and the energy surges, and just like that the Matrix renews, and in the process, Prime repairs. You see, Sparky knew that Prime and his Autobots would care for this world as much as he cared for Spike, and without Optimus, the world itself would possibly go down, and with it, Spike would go down. So yeah, he sacrificed himself not only for the greater good, but also for his son. Anyway, Optimus rises, restored to his full power and strength. He says Sparky will not be forgotten. He promises to protect Spike and the entire world. And at that exact moment, Devastator breaks through the ceiling of the Ark. But by now, you know that Prime was gonna kick some ass, and he does exactly that. Optimus grabs Devastator's finger and rips it off. Yes, he rips it off. Then he takes his ion blaster and fires alongside Megatron's fusion cannon mounted on his arm. The combination does the trick and Devastator feels it. Meanwhile, outside, Starscream pins Cliffjumper down and mocks him. He reminds Cliff that he slaughtered his entire clan. The wound remains open, but our girl Carly grabs one of the Transformers' guns and fires at Starscream. Cliff then takes the weapon and aims at Starscream's head. He says he always wondered what this moment would feel like. I mean, he absolutely has the shot. He could end it. And yet, he simply could not bring himself to pull the trigger. See, this is the difference between Autobots and Decepticons. The latter do whatever it takes, as Starscream once claimed. Anyway, Carly shouts at Cliff. She lists everything Starscream has done. But Cliff is tired. Tired of war, tired of death. That hesitation costs them. And all that this hesitation does is give Starscream the time to recover and grab Carly, squeezing her tight. Back at the Ark's edge, Optimus lures Devastator toward a cliff. He taunts him and gets him to charge. At the last second, Prime moves under him and pushes the giant over the edge. Devastator falls, and he lands directly on top of Starscream. The impact frees Carly from Starscream's grip. With their leader severely damaged, the Decepticons retreat. The Constructicons haul Starscream away, Thundercracker and Soundwave also pull back, and Prime attempts to do something unexpected. Like the good leader he is, he offers peace. He asks Soundwave to consider working together to save their home, but Soundwave rejects it and flies off. No deal. And then we cut to the hospital, where Spike wakes up. The doctor tells him not to speak, so he writes on a piece of paper. Only one line. "Where's my dad?" And after everything we just saw, that question hits our hearts like an arrow. Issue number 7, The Next Move and a New Leader. Now, this one does something that the previous 6 issues did not. It takes us momentarily out of Earth and drops us straight onto Cybertron. Elita 1 leads a squad of Autobots toward a fortress that belongs to Shockwave. They search for one of their own. And before anyone asks, yes, this mission feels super desperate from the very beginning. The Decepticons ambush them in between the assault. Huffer goes down. Warpath follows. Cup takes heavy damage and urges Elita to keep him going, to save him. Who's the so-called him? Well, you'll soon know. So Elita pushes forward, kicks in the door, and finds what remains of Ultra Magnus. Yep, that's the him. However, Ultra Magnus was in bad shape. He had not been defeated in battle, not imprisoned in full form. He had simply been stripped down to a near skeletal pile of parts. So, if you needed a reminder that this war has no mercy, there it is. I mean, you know anyway how bad things are, especially because guys like Starscream are squishing humans and nearly murdering their own. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the world outside Farmingham finally reacts. In the Pacific Ocean, the captain of the USS Henry Harrison receives orders from an admiral to head toward the coast of Washington and investigate reports of giant robots. Now here's something interesting I found when I looked up USS Henry Harrison. So, the Henry Harrison has the name of William Henry Harrison, the 9th President of the United States. In real-world naval tradition, ships often bear presidents' names, but Harrison never had a vessel named after him. He also held the shortest presidency in history, just 31 days before his death in office. Make of that what you will. Back at the Ark, the Decepticons deal with leadership. Soundwave calls a meeting and challenges Starscream for command. Starscream attempts to sway the others, but Thundercracker reminds him that this is their way. If you want command, you fight for it. Soundwave attacks, but Starscream tries to bargain before the fight could finish, but Soundwave does not care. Laserbeak strikes and Starscream loses an eye. Then Soundwave tears pieces from Starscream's chest and throws him over a cliff. Safe to say that Starscream lost. Soundwave turns to the remaining Decepticons and promises something different. He says that unlike Starscream's recent stint at the leadership, his would not be a rule that seeks personal gain. Rather, he would focus on rebuilding the Decepticon name together, which they would conquer together, destroy together, and make others kneel before the Decepticons as a united side. Needless to say, this sounded much more favorable to the remaining Decepticons, most of whom had already developed some resentment towards Starscream and his methods. Outside the Ark, RC introduces herself to Carly, who was practicing with a rifle. Carly sets up cans and bottles as targets. RC asks to join and blasts them away with ease, and looking at the precision with which RC shoots, Carly gets impressed, but that does not mean RC was gonna feel proud of the little achievement. You see, she talks about her past and how her clan died when she was young. Ultra Magnus rescued her and taught her to fight. As the war dragged on, she learned that hate takes more than it gives. She believes Ultra Magnus died because of her. Of course, she does not know that he was recently rescued back on Cybertron by Elita 1. But the guilt that RC feels is tremendous, and all Carly does is listen. But then something clicks inside her, and she resumes firing her rifle. You can tell she still is very angry at Cliff for not ending the life of someone who killed her father. But maybe that's why RC was telling her that hate takes more than it offers. Inside the Ark, Jazz and Cliffjumper watch from a distance. Cliff admits Carly has not spoken to him since he refused to pull the trigger on Starscream, and Jazz reassures him. He says Cliff made the right choice, and this explains the moral line the Autobots tried to hold. Optimus and Ratchet visit Spike at Farmingham Hospital, but Spike refuses to speak to Prime. He says he needs time after his father sacrificed himself. That hurts, but Prime accepts Spike's decision. In fact, he respects it. On the drive back, something strange happens. Optimus sees a vision of himself holding a baby human. The image distracts him so much that he drives off the road. And when Ratchet asks what happened, Prime simply tells him that he does not know. In fact, the 8th issue has Prime have a dream-like sequence where the baby grows up. But that's the story for another time. They return to the Ark, where Wheeljack works on restoring more Autobots. However, Teletran 1 now incorporates parts from Skywarp. It locks Wheeljack out of repair systems, but he cannot access full functionality, and he needs time to find a workaround. Optimus urges him to hurry because the Autobots may hold momentum for now, but they need to press the advantage, and the sooner they do that, the better. Wheeljack says they must locate the Decepticons first, and wonders aloud about creating a flying vehicle to scout. Optimus responds that he has a plan, and that's when he looks towards the remains of Jetfire. And there it is! A new leader rises among the Decepticons. The Autobots regroup with limited resources. Elita finds Magnus reduced to scraps. Spike withdraws from the others while Carly processes her father's loss in a different way and trains, and the Autobots get a new leader. I think these 7 issues form a beautiful arc. To be honest, the official Volume 1 titled Robots in Disguise contained only issues 1 through 6, but I thought the first 7 issues formed a more comprehensive arc. Transformers 2023 has proven to be an exceptional piece of work, especially when you consider the fact that it is a licensed comic book. Very many wondrous and despicable things happen later on in the story, especially after Megatron surfaces. And if you are a fan of Transformers comics, this one should go straight into your reading list. That was all in this one, and if you liked the video, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these lore lockdowns.